Doesn't? Yeah. Yeah, alles klar. Ja.
There'll be an opportunity to give Shalom to Rosh Yeshiva after the formal part of the proceedings. And in my own name, I'd like to thank you, firstly, for coming to attend tonight's Mesilas Mitzvah. When I was a young younger man and I began to become successful in business, I went back to Ponevezh to ask Rav Shach how one has to give tzedakah. And I asked him, I had a list of questions which I asked him, and after 45 minutes I'd finished my list and he'd given clear instructions. And he said to me, if you've finished your questions, I have a question for you. He said, do you have more than one child yet? And I smiled. I said, no, I only have a son, Chaim, at that stage. No, he said, can you imagine that once you'll give one child supper and you'll tell the other child you're not giving them supper? I said, no, I can't imagine such a thing. He said, no, he said, we refer to the Bnei Shalom so many times as our Father. Why is it that he doesn't give everybody all that they need? But some, it seems, he gives to and others he doesn't. If he's our Father, just like you have that feeling, he must have that feeling too. I thought for a second, I said, yeah, it's a good question. She was asking a strong question. He said, in later life, he said, you'll be invited to go to a chasna, and you'll be standing at the bottom of the stairs, and you'll ask your wife if she's ready to go, and she'll say, I'm ready, but we can't leave yet, because the children haven't eaten supper yet. I've prepared the food in the kitchen, but who's going to serve it to them? And you'll think of an idea, and you'll call one of the children, and you'll say, listen, Mummy's prepared supper in the kitchen. This child needs to drink before he starts eating. That child doesn't like fish, so leave out the fish. And you'll give a list of instructions to that particular child, and you'll say to him or her, you leave that child responsible to make sure that everybody eats supper properly. You'll go to the chasna, and the next morning at breakfast, you'll ask all the children, were you all looked after last night? And they'll nod. They'll say, yes, he or she gave us exactly as we needed, looked after each one of our individual needs as requested. And you'll call that child across, and you'll give, well, I said, you'll give a stroke on the cheek of the child, you'll thank the child, and you'll say, because you obeyed the instructions so well, you can stay up half an hour longer than you normally can this evening. That's tzedakah. And it gave you a different concept. It explains tzedakah a little bit differently to the way one imagines tzedakah is. Let me share one other point with you before I ask Rosh Yeshiva to address us. I'm a governor of a state school, and a few months ago the headmaster of the school called me up and said he had a funny conversation with a councillor, with the local authority. Somebody had phoned up and said, urgently, do you have a program to renew the windows in the school? If you do, please, we're asking you, submit it today, we will okay it tomorrow, and you'll have money before the end of the month. And the head said to me, it was a bit of a funny request because we didn't have such a good relationship with the local authority over the years. And suddenly we're having this sort of conversation. He was a bit suspicious, and as I had a contact with that local authority, he asked me to find out what was going on. I phoned up my friend at the local authority, And I heard him chuckle at the end of the telephone. And he said, oh, is it that time of year again? I said, what do you mean? He said, this time of the year, there's an argument between each government department and the Treasury as to next year's budget. And what they do is, they send teams of civil servants around the country, and the team comprises two people, one person representing the Department of Education, and one person representing the Treasury. And they check two things. Firstly, they check whether the budget that was set last year has been spent, because if it was too much last year, then they know next year they can cut it. And secondly, they check something called value for money. Was the money spent wisely? And they come and they visit, and the way they check whether all the money was allocated is easy. They check, they go through the books, they say, we allocated you so and so much last year, have you spent it all? They check whether it was spent wisely by asking for a sample month. They always ask for the last month before the visit as the sample month. And they check. Now, each civil servant has a different idea of what's called validly spent, what's value for money. But there's some things that everybody agrees on. The refurbishment of school buildings has been a policy of every government for many, many years. Therefore, money spent on the refurbishment of buildings qualifies for sure as money well spent. Obviously, your council, your local authority, has not spent all its money and scared of the inspection it's getting very shortly, and therefore it wants to spend its money, and it wants to spend it wisely, and it's asking you to submit an application which it would okay, and you'll get the money. And we did, and we have in that school new windows as a result. Rabbi Sai, in exactly 1 week's time, in exactly a week's time, our budgets are being reviewed, and we're going to go through exactly the same tests. The test of whether we spent all that was allocated and whether it was spent wisely. The Beinstone arranged it in such a way that the Rosh Yeshiva was mezaka us with an opportunity clearly to spend it and spend it wisely. Not only is he giving us that opportunity, but he's standing here a week before we need Siyata Dishmaya, and he's inviting us to renew our contact with the big family of Mir, because he as the head of the family of Mir, it is oisbetten if we renew our shaykhs with his family. B'dechila rechima, one of the privileges of being involved in this great campaign is that I'm allowed to say the following words. Moran Rosh Yeshiva, please give us divrei chizuk.
Yes. Ich bin jetzt stupid. Sie ist erst mit uns. Doch, sehr rasch. Das Ernstbach vertraut ich schüttle Breitschulterwitz. Danke. Man lädt es ein. Ihre Tage frei. Ein Tag. Als man lädt wenn ich was schüttle Breit. Effect of prime, to form, have you gather rock. Die Prime sagt, ja, bin das. Aber früher gefiel ein Telefon mit der Simon. Ich Muskeln mein Rabbit sind, fragen und ansagen. Sie kommen ein bisschen später wie jeder